Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Athletic Fantasy Baseball Podcast. It is Sunday, June 6th, and Sunday is waiver and fab day in the fantasy baseball world. Michael Beller, Al Melchior, that's what we're going to be talking about here with you for the next, 45 minutes, maybe an hour or so, getting ready to place our bids in the fantasy baseball fab marketplace. Of course, this episode, like all of them, brought to you by Topps. Be sure to check out Topps Project 70, celebrating 70 years of Topps baseball cards. Al, let's dive right in. I think there is only one smart way to start off the discussion with fab and waivers this weekend. Don't you agree? Don't you agree there's only one smart way to do it, one brainy way to do it, one thoughtful way to do it? It's with Patrick Wisdom of the Chicago Cubs, getting plenty of playing time here, Al.
I think it's a wise move. I agree.
Yeah, I mean, look, the guy's hitting 400, 438, 967 in 32 plate appearances, 5 homers. Safe to say that's not going to continue. But Nico Hoerner, David Bodie, Matt Duffy, all on the IL. Wisdom's going to have the opportunity to play for this team so long as he keeps hitting.
No, I agree. And, a little power to kind of put some teeth into your lineup. All right, I'll stop with the puns there. Anyway, I agree. There's power potential. There's playing time. That's there's no reason to think that that's going to be threatened. I mean, the only question is, you would have to ask yourself, well, why has Wisdom spent so long in the minors and not really gotten an extended shot in the majors before? He does strike out a lot, but I think he can live with that. So if you need to replace somebody at the corners, it is the wise move. So I did get one more in there.
How shallow would you be willing to go with Wisdom? I think 15 teamers is an easy yes. Would you go as shallow as 12?
I would consider it. I have a hard time seeing because there's going to be some other third base eligible players we're going to talk about who I think are maybe in the discussion, but I would at least consider it.
Well, maybe Miguel Andujar is someone who you put into that discussion. He started 7 of the last 8 games. He's got 3 homers in that span for the Yankees. I think even though he started 7 of the last 8, I feel a little more comfortable with Wisdom's playing time, but he does bring that outfield eligibility to the table as well. He brings that third base eligibility that Wisdom's got. Where is he factoring in for you as you start to make your bids this weekend?
Well, for me, Andujar is really 15 teams and deeper. You mentioned the playing time, the question there more so than with Wisdom. And also it's just, while he's been hitting better lately, we just really haven't seen power from him in an extended way since he had shoulder surgery. So I'm just not sure that he really is going to return to being the same hitter that he was in 2018. Just a lot of question marks for me there. So that makes him more of a deep leaguer.
Yeah, I think I'm with you also on that. He needs to be mentioned just because of the mere fact that he's been playing so much for the Yankees over the last week and change. But I do think that you're really talking about him in much more of a deep league context. Someone who we might have said that about recently, but I don't think we're saying that necessarily about anymore is Jonathan Dazza. He started basically every game over the last week and change for Colorado. He's starting in center. He's hitting second. 12 for his last 27, 3 walks, just 4 strikeouts. He's getting on base, and he's going to play for this team. I think he's starting to become a very intriguing guy into 14, 15, perhaps even 12-team leagues with what we've seen from him recently.
Well, without power, he's not getting onto my 12-teamers, probably not even onto a 14-team league for me. But he certainly has graduated up from NL only, given the batting average position and the batting average potential that he certainly brings, especially while he's swinging a hot bat.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm a little bit more bullish on him because of the leash he's going to have and the fact that I think he's going to play every day, hitting in the top third of that order. It's not the best order in the league, certainly even with Trevor Story healthy. But this is just a playing time play for me, and one that I think is going to stick around for the foreseeable future. And this is a team we expect to be active as sellers. So if Dazza remains in Colorado, but some other guys don't, that could even lock in some more of that playing time for him as we start to get really into the heart of MLB trade discussion now that we are comfortably into the month of June. We've got a lot of guys here this weekend, Al, who are eligible at middle infield positions. We got a lot of help. If you need a second base, third base, or second base, shortstop, middle infield, you have no shortage of choices available to you. Let's start with Luis Urias, getting some nice run with the Brewers. And as you pointed out, a very nice schedule ahead this week.
Yeah, really nice schedule. 3 at Cincinnati, so you like the ballpark. Then coming back to Milwaukee, another good ballpark against the Pirates, and you like those matchups against the Pirates, or at
Hmm.
least I do. He's got that, as you said, the middle infield, second base, shortstop eligibility, also third base. So between the flexibility that he brings you and the playing time he's going to get, at least in the short term, with Colton Wong on the IL, I think given the choice between the two, in a vacuum, I might go with Urias over Wisdom. But again, it depends on what my team needs. But
Hmm.
he hit with some power, and I think the batting average is going to come up for Urias. And I just really am going to see myself targeting him in a lot of leagues this weekend.
Yeah, I could see the argument for Urias over Wisdom. I would prefer Wisdom because I just think he's got, with all those injuries in Milwaukee, I think Wisdom's got a better lineup around him. You know, the Cubs are running out a lot of names we haven't heard a ton of in their 6, 7, 8 spots, but those first 5 spots are still Wilson Contreras, Anthony Rizzo, Javier Baez, Chris Bryant, now Patrick Wisdom hitting 5th a lot when he gets in the lineup. So I think he's got a little bit more of just the counting stat upside than Urias. Cesar Hernandez also with some decent upside in this Cleveland lineup. We've talked about this a few times this season. The guy leads off every game, and I know this Cleveland lineup is not what it's been in years past with Francisco Lindor. It's even less than it was earlier in the season with Franmil Reyes on the IL. But he leads off. He's got 3 homers in his last 5 games or so, and starting to fulfill some of the promise that a lot of us had for him earlier this season.
And then some, really, because I've never thought of Hernandez as a power threat. I've always
Mhm.
looked to him as an on base guy who, at least prior to the last 2 seasons, also stole some bases. But he's up to 9 home runs now. And the thing is, he's backing that up with some good StatCast numbers. So I'm not sure where this came from. I'm not sure how long it's going to last, but at least as a short term middle infield fill in, I'd be very happy to add Hernandez this weekend.
Yeah, I really think that this is a nice ad, and I think Tony Kemp can factor in here too. A lot of the same things that we've been talking about with players already. He's gonna play a lot, and he's doing very well with the playing time he's had. 286, 387, 451 in 114 plate appearances for Tony Kemp. He is not the sort of guy we think about in that vein. He's not really the sort of guy we think about as an everyday player. He gets a start here, a start there. He's a very dangerous pinch runner, and that's basically been Tony Kemp's role his entire major league career. Now he's got a line on some consistent playing time. He's taking advantage of it, and that stolen base upside, even though we haven't seen a ton of it this year, just 3 steals in those 114 plate appearances, we know it's there.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, in a way, sort of a Cesar Hernandez profile pre 2020.
Yeah,
So you
sure.
can't necessarily count on much power from Tony Kemp. So depending on which player you go after, it might depend on what categories you need help in. But I'm in some OBP leagues, and Kemp's going to be a
Mhm.
top target for me there.
Yeah, Kemp definitely gets a little bit of a boost in OBP leagues. The 386, the 286 and the 387 are both higher than he's going to end the season, almost certainly. But the 286 feels like more of an outlier than the 387. Definitely an asset for you in OBP leagues. Let's get to another guy who can give you some middle infield flexibility, but also qualifies at both corner spots. That is Colin Moran, expected to be activated by the Pirates from the IL today on Sunday. So that's going to happen. We'll see how he plays in his first game back. But this is a guy who is hitting very well before he went on the IL. 297, 352, 468 with 4 homers in 122 plate appearances. Another guy who it's flexibility plus rates. That's what makes Colin Moran an attractive ad this weekend.
It does. I'm not really sure where I'm at with Moran right now. He's certainly somebody I would be really happy to add in 15 teamers, maybe
Yeah.
14 teamers. But I think that slash line, in a way, it's a little bit misleading because he's not showing as much power either on the surface stats or in the StatCast metrics as he did in 2020, which looked like a power breakout for Moran. But he's getting a lot of hits on balls in play that I don't know if that rate is going to be sustainable for him.
Mhm.
So I'm kind of banking that we'll see more power now that he's back, but I'm not really sure which version we see going forward.
I think there's reason to believe that there's a little bit of a flip coming. But again, like the thing that attracts me most to him is the flexibility in the playing time.
Yeah.
With Colin Moran active, he plays every day for Pittsburgh. There's no question about that, right? So he's going to be out there, he's going to be in the lineup, and then you just have so many ways to move him around. And with all the injuries that are befalling Major League Baseball, and it seems an outsized proportion of that are guys who we really count on in the fantasy world, like you have a guy who can give you first base, second base, third base, middle infield, corner infield eligibility. I mean, that is a very valuable piece to have. We'll have a few more guys who can hit that number of positions coming up a little bit later. But Colin Moran, maybe not quite at the top of the list of guys we're talking about on this episode of the Athletic Fantasy Baseball Podcast, at least for me, but love that level of flexibility that he brings. I'm going to jump right to the next guy who I do think goes to the top of the list for me. It's Asdrubal Cabrera. Exact same eligibility as Colin Moran, first, second, third. So that adds middle and corner as well. Activated from the IL on Friday. He hasn't started yet. Al and I are recording this at 11:45 a.m. Eastern time. Arizona playing a little bit later, so we don't have any eyeballs on their lineup just yet for the day, but have to believe that he's going to be getting into that starting lineup pretty soon. Another guy who was hitting very well before he went on the IL, 287, 387, 470 in 137 plate appearances before that IL stint. I think this is a great guy to add if you are really hurt by injuries right now.
And if you need some power, because you figure sooner or later Cabrera is going to produce that for you. So I agree. I mean, doesn't necessarily separate him out from some of the others in this group, like Moran, for example. But yeah, certainly a nice player to add.
Yeah, this is I actually had him on a 14-teamer before he went on the IL, and for those exact reasons that I've spelled out: injuries to that team, plus the flexibility that he offers, being eligible at so many different positions. And I dropped him. No one scooped him. I went and picked him right back up once he was coming off the IL because of that flexibility. Love that flexibility and what he brings to the table. Another guy who I would imagine is going to be a pretty hot name in the trade market as Arizona slips farther and further out of contention. How about Hunter Renfroe, Al? Let's get to him for a second. A little bit less available than some of the people that we've talked about to this point, but he's not like he is, widely owned. This is someone who you can still go after in a lot of leagues, starting to hit over the last 10 games or so, 15 for 33 with 2 homers in that span. Does have 10 Ks against the 4 walks in that span a little bit. We know strikeouts are going to be part of his game, but this is the player that the Red Sox thought they were getting. Good hit tool, hitting for some power. Now he's starting to show it in a very strong offense.
Yeah, I think the timing is really great to pick Renfroe up. It's a 7-game week for the Red Sox this week, and that's a big deal because we got a lot of teams with 5-game schedules this week, only 3 games on Monday. So that 7 games can really give him an edge over maybe some of your roster alternatives. The schedule's not great, but it's not terrible. It's not as bad as it might look. There's a makeup game against the Marlins and then 3-game series against the Astros and the Blue Jays at home. So some tough matchups there, but some decent enough matchups that I think Renfroe probably winds up having a really good week.
Do you remember the last time you saw a 3-game day in Major League Baseball? When I saw that, I thought it was a mistake.
Same here. I know. I cannot remember.
I went and checked a second source after I saw you. I just pulled up an app on my phone, looking at the Monday schedule, 3 games. And I went and looked at it and saying, yeah, indeed, 3 games. That'll be an interesting one to get the week started on Monday. How about Jonathan India, another guy who's going to give us some middle infield eligibility, second and third base here. This is a lineup that we do already have available to us as we are recording this, and India is leading off for the second straight game. 13 for 33, 2 homers, 8 walks against 6 strikeouts over his last 12 games. He's getting on base a ton, showing a little bit of power, and if he sticks at the leadoff spot, or even just gets, maybe a handful of starts at the leadoff spot every week for Cincinnati, he suddenly becomes a lot more intriguing than he's been to this point of the season.
Yeah, I was surprised to see that his barrel rate is just under 10%. So I figured he's a good pickup this week just for the OBP, the run scoring possibilities, but more thump than I had realized from Jonathan India. So yeah, it's hard to get used to this because all season long I've been complaining it's hard to get really good second base eligible players. So we've named 6 or 7 already. So he's certainly one of them.
Yeah, we have, and he's also someone who the Reds do have some injuries. We're still waiting for Nick Senzel, Mike Moustakas, Joey Votto, all those guys to come back. I think that India, though, I mean, he was already playing plenty when the team was fully healthy. I don't think he's going to be someone who loses too much playing time if and when those guys are back in the lineup. So Jonathan India, not just a short-term ad, I don't think. I think you're going to be pretty happy with him for the long haul here. Another guy who fits that second base eligibility, middle infield, corner infield, bringing a whole lot of flexibility. Willie Castro, I'm a little less interested in him. I just thought he was worth mentioning because he has been swinging a hot bat over the last 10 games. 12 for 31, 2 homers. He has a steal. He does have a little bit of pedigree to his name as well. So we maybe give him a little bit of a bump when he gets hot because of that. I still think he's behind all the guys we've talked about to this point. Maybe I put him on the same parallel with Tony Kemp in non-OBP leagues, but someone who I think at least, like if I missed out on all these guys and I still needed help, Willie Castro, I would be fine with as a contingent ad.
Yeah, I'm completely on the same page with you about that. No more than a contingent ad for me. If you did happen to buy into what he did in 2020, then his bat coming around now this season, that's a good development. I just never really did completely buy into what he did last year. So of all these players that we've named so far, he's at the bottom of the list for me.
Yeah, he will definitely be, when I go in and if I'm adding a middle infielder, right, I've got, as Drupal Cabrera first, Jonathan India second, Colin Moran third, Tony Kemp fourth. If I somehow miss out on all of them, I've got Willie Castro sitting there. If I really need the help, I would be okay with it. So definitely worth thinking about, definitely worth putting on your radar, but not a big flashing light, just sort of a blip that shows up faintly as you are making your bids later today. One more guy I thought was worth mentioning, Bradley Zimmer. He does have 3 steals in his last 5 games. He's getting to play because of all the injuries in Cleveland's lineup. He just can't get on base. I think you have to be really desperate for steals to want to take on the batting average / OBP risk that Zimmer presents, because he can steal bases in the rare instances that he does get on base.
Yeah, I have a hard time seeing the mixed league where maybe it's a nominal like $1 contingency bid just to see if I can get those steals, but then I still have to find a place to start them. Right. So I'd be more inclined to go after somebody like Brett Phillips or maybe even Willie Castro.
Yeah, guys who we have certainly talked about in the past who don't bring that same sort of risk that Bradley Zimmer does. One of the guys who we were going to talk about, Garrett Cooper, you and I talked about him on an episode of Fantasy Baseball in 15, but unfortunately suffered an injury over the weekend. No IL stint just yet. Keep an eye on that. Maybe we get some good news before you have to lock your bids in on Sunday. So definitely keep an eye if Garrett Cooper potentially is going to be someone you want to go after if you can avoid an IL stint here this weekend. Think about all the purchases that you've made over the last year, probably a whole lot of delivery, right? Then there's the one of the biggest purchases you make every single year, insurance. Americans overspend on car and home insurance by billions of dollars every year. That's money that could have been spent on more delivery, frankly. That's where the Zebra can help you. The Zebra is the nation's leading insurance comparison site for car and home insurance. In minutes, you can compare policies from every major provider for free, all on one independent marketplace. After a few quick questions, the Zebra pairs people with the right insurance company for them, helping everyone save time and money. Buy online or over the phone with one of their licensed agents. Right now, you can make insurance your smartest purchase yet. Just visit thezebra.com/fantasy MLB to get your free quote today. That's thezebra.com/fantasy MLB. The beginning of any journey can feel daunting. You're not sure you're heading in the right direction, and maybe you don't know exactly what to prepare for. But with Credit Karma, you can be more informed about what's ahead. Credit Karma's game-changing technology shows you tailored offers for credit cards and personal loans that you're more likely to be approved for, so you can apply with more confidence. They use your credit and other financial information to show you custom recommendations, whether you want cashback, travel rewards, or to consolidate debt. Credit Karma can help you find the offers that fit your goals. With a selection of options and approval odds, you have the power to make informed decisions. Right now, go to creditkarma.com/MLB15. That is spelled out, not 1-5, and learn more and find offers that are tailored just for you. It's creditkarma.com/MLB15, or you can find offers on the Credit Karma app. All right, Al, let's get back to the show here, and let's move it on over to starting pitchers. Now, this is one that is going to depend on your league size, your league shape, how aggressive your league is with pitchers, how things work out. I was surprised to see how available Alex Cobb is. In some of the industry leagues you and I play in, he obviously isn't available, but you're seeing roster rates on CBS, on Yahoo, in some of the more public leagues that are hovering around 30%. So I felt like we had to talk about him. Last 4 starts, a 2.25 ERA, a 0.83 whip, 26 Ks against 8 walks in 24 innings. Obviously, 15 team, you want him. I think 14 team, you want him. how shallow does a league have to be where you wouldn't add him? I mean, 10 teamers, as shallow as that, are you adding Alex Cobb?
Not that shallow, but 12 teamers. I'm looking because I like this matchup that he's got this week against the Diamondbacks. And I agree with you that those roster rates are really low for Cobb. I mean, the peripherals are really terrific. It's sort of hard to really poke a hole in them. I think the biggest question is maybe how deep he goes in the start, using him in a 1-start week. But even if he doesn't make the cut for your rotation this week, he certainly will in future weeks. So I think Cobb's a great ad.
Who's the next Baltimore starter who goes and revives himself with the Angels?
Bruce Zimmerman, maybe. I don't know. John Means is doing all right, but
yeah, right. That's the path. You start it, you flail around in Baltimore, you go to the opposite coast, you find yourself with the Angels. Martin Perez, speaking of finding himself, another guy who I think deserves a little bit more love this season, not quite on the Cobb level, but has been very good for the balance of the season. A 3.09 ERA, a 1.23 whip, 52 strikeouts in 58 1/3 innings, just shut down the Astros. His last time out, he's not someone who you're going to want to trust, even despite those numbers, every single time he takes the ball. But I do think that we should be talking about him at least as a streamer and maybe someone who can stick on a roster, but you don't necessarily always deploy. This could be one of those weeks where you don't deploy him. A very tough 2-start week against Houston and Toronto.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with both of those statements. I think that Perez has not really gotten his proper due this season, and also agree that even though it's a 2-start week, that there's absolutely no way I'm putting him in my rotation this week. But in the future, if he gets Baltimore and Tampa Bay or something like that, that I'm fine with that. I'm fine with even one pretty tough start, but those are two very, very dangerous opponents. So not the week to use Martin Perez.
Let me ask you this. Let's say that there is a discount likely to be had on Martin Perez because no one wants to pick him up to start him against Houston and Toronto, despite what he just did against Houston. If you were in a league where you could add him and weren't compelled to start him by league rules when you add him off waivers, would you take a shot on maybe getting him at a little bit cheaper of a price this week, not start him against Houston and Toronto, and then see what rolls around for him the week after?
It's a great idea. It's a great idea. So I will go to my TGFBI, which is 15 teams. That's the perfect kind of league to have him in. And there will be a week soon, I'm sure, where he would make my rotation. So yeah, great idea.
All right, Al, another guy who maybe deserves a little bit more love here, and another guy you and I talked about on an episode of Fantasy Baseball in 15 last week, Austin Gomber. This guy has been throwing the ball incredibly well of late. 1.53 ERA, 0.81 whip, 32 Ks against 3 walks in his last 29 1/3 innings, and 11 1/3 of that came in 2 starts against the Padres. So it's not as though he has just been rolling over the Mariners and the Pirates in lineups like that. His next start comes against the Marlins. How interested are we in Austin Gomber? We've talked about him plenty as a streamer. Are we feeling him as someone who can stick on rosters in at least 14 and 15 teamers?
I am, and maybe even 12 teamers. I just think he's good, and I think occasionally he can be trusted in Colorado, and certainly can be trusted in Miami. So in a week where you don't really have in your league potentially any viable to start streamers, Gomber's going to probably be one of your better 1-start options if he is in fact available.
I love this sort of ad. I love this sort of ad because he has a great start this week, at least on paper, against Miami, and they can really stick around. And we are just, I know I talk about this a fair amount on this show, so I apologize if I'm belaboring the point, but it's just not often that on June 6th, you can add someone in a deep competitive league who can be a real weapon for you the rest of the season as a pitcher. We can find that. We can find bats. We can find short-term bats that we can cycle in and out. We can find some bats that, a guy just had a bad first 2 months of the season, and then he gets right or he gets hot or whatever the case may be. We can find bats. Look at all those guys we just ran through that we would be happy about. No one knew who Patrick Wisdom was a month ago, and now he's got 5 homers in his first 32 plate appearances. We can find bats. It's not often you can find a pitcher like this, and also just for fun, get to have him throw his first start against Miami. So Austin Gomber, I think someone who, even if I felt like I was okay in my rotation, I would be thinking about this week. And I think Caleb Smith is another guy, a little bit deeper. Obviously has a little bit more to prove at this stage of the season than Austin Gomber does. But Caleb Smith is now getting a shot in Arizona's rotation. He's been, a more effective than not reliever for them for the entire season. He made one start last week, 5 innings, 2 runs, 3 hits, 2 Ks, and a walk against the Mets. His next start will come over the weekend against the Angels. I actually believe he is matching up with Alex Cobb in that outing. We know Caleb Smith has some strikeout upside. We know that he has gotten into trouble with walks previously in his career, but I like taking a little bit of a shot on this guy, Al. I think that upside, the fact that he's got a spot in the rotation now, not a horrible first start against the Angels coming up here, like all these things add up to me where I'm not going to break the bank, but I definitely want to have some action on him this weekend.
Well, I think it's analogous to the Martin Perez situation. Not that the Angels matchup is necessarily on its own going to depress what you're going to have to bid on him, but I think it's still, coming off of a start against the Mets where he only got 2 strikeouts. Probably there's not going to be a lot of interest. So I think now's a great time to get in on Caleb Smith, just in the hopes that he gets back to where he was when he was really the heart of the Marlins rotation. So I think that possibility is still out there.
Yeah, I really do think it's out there too. And again, another guy who, maybe provides you some long-term value here if he is able to get right and start missing bats again. A couple of youngsters I just wanted to throw by you: Vladimir Gutierrez, Tucker Davidson. Gutierrez in Cincy, Davidson in Atlanta. Both these guys are getting opportunities in their rotation because of injuries. Do either of them stand out to you as something more than a streamer, or are these NL only sort of guys / streamers?
Mostly NL only, maybe some deep mixers, but not yet really going beyond that.
Both have had issues with walks so far, and they both have made, I believe, just 2 starts, and they both have issued 6 walks in their 2 starts combined. Not a surprise to see from youngsters like this. I felt like we had to talk about them because they are sticking in their rotations for the time being. You would think at least Davidson has some win upside, being tied to an Atlanta team that I still can't give up on. I don't care how they've played for the first 2 months and change of the season. So wanted to at least mention them, wanted to make sure we got their names in the show. Definitely, no question about it. If you were thinking about adding them as long-term guys, they come way after the ones we have talked to this point of the show. Al, you referenced this a little bit earlier, a very thin week for 2-start pitchers. We're going to get a week like this every now and again. It's just a confluence of events. As you said, we have a lot of teams that are only playing 5 games this week, so no 2-start pitchers for them. Then we have a lot of 2-start pitchers, the guys who are making 2 starts, who are just owned, who are just widely rostered. So we have a very thin number of pitchers. I've actually written them all down in our show sheet, so I think we can run through them all. Some of them are going to be pretty quick and easy to dismiss. Some of them we're going to want to talk about a little bit more. But again, people are going to want those 2-start pitchers. So we got to talk about all of them, given how few options we have this week. These are just in alphabetical order by team. The first is Antonio Senzatella at Miami and at Cincinnati. Love that Miami matchup. Don't love the ballpark for Cincinnati. Don't mind the lineup that he's facing. Senzatella has been pretty bad this season, though, so I'm not sure I can trust this one. How about you?
Well, I'm going to go with the analysis from the show sheet. You wrote yuck performance this season. So I'm going to say yuck to this 2-step for Senzatella.
Yeah, I think that's where I'm at too. Even if I can't get any of the other guys, I would just take a pass on a 2-start week if it was Senzatella or nothing. Matthew Boyd, the next guy I want to talk about. This is only going to be a shallower league play. Matthew Boyd obviously is pretty roundly owned in 15-teamers, but maybe 12-teamers. He's sitting out there. He gets Seattle in his first start of the week, and then he gets the White Sox over the weekend. So my question to you, Al, is, I guess we can talk about this from both. Well, let's talk about it for 12 and 15-teamers. In a 12-teamer, is the matchup with Seattle good enough to take on the matchup with the White Sox and add him? In a 15-teamer, it's the same question, but do you start him knowing that you have that White Sox matchup looming over the weekend?
Well, it's a definite no in 12-teamers. And as I wrote about in the Next Week in Fantasy Baseball column on The Athletic, the Mariners on the road are a pretty good hitting team, at least a decent hitting team. And I think they're in the, I want to say top 6th in road ISO. So they can do some damage. So it's not necessarily a cake matchup that you can rest on and then wait for the White Sox to see what they do. I think there's too much danger in these 2 starts for a 12-team league. In 15-team, then it's a question of your options, which are obviously going to be thinner, So
Mhm.
maybe a yes in 15 teamers.
All depends on those options you have available to you. I will say the White Sox, they are just crushing, absolutely crushing left-handed pitching this season. So that makes another sticky one for Boyd over the weekend. Chris Bubich is going to get a couple of starts this week. The first one will come at the Angels. The second one will come at the A's, with the Royals making a West Coast swing. Bubich has been pretty good since he's landed in the rotation. He's thrown 21 and 1/3 innings as a starter this season, 2.53 ERA, 1.3 run whip. He's been walking between the raindrops a little bit there, 18 Ks and 9 walks. Like the Angels matchup, don't necessarily love the A's matchup, but of course you've got that ballpark to support you there. I think this is a 50-50 sort of play. This is one where if I really felt like I needed the starts, really needed the volume, like it's the good Senzatella, basically. If I need the volume, I'll take it on. If I don't really need the two starts, I'll probably take a pass on Bubich.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. And when you say 50-50, for me, that'd probably be in a 15 team league. So he's really
Yeah.
not on the board
That's
for
what I
me
meant.
in a 12 teamer.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, we're on the same page. We're always sort of assuming 15 teams. We try to throw the 12 team stuff in there as well. But yes, I agree with you. I think the other shoe could certainly drop on Bubich at any moment, and these are middle of the road matchups at best for him this week. How about Daniel Castano? This is someone who we are assuming is going to take Eliezer Hernandez's spot in Miami's rotation, and what a bummer that is. Was throwing the ball well, gets hurt running the bases. Really excited to see him back in that rotation, and right away he's headed back to the IL. We've seen Castano a little bit this season. We assume, again, this has not been announced by Miami, but we're assuming he's the one who slots in. If he does, he will get Colorado at home on Tuesday, and then the Braves in Atlanta over the weekend. What's your interest level in Castano?
For the two starts, really pretty much zero. And only, I suppose if I could pick him up, that'd be fine. But in any mixed league, I mean, hey, that's a great matchup for to get the Rockies, not only in Miami, but coming from Colorado. That's just going to be such a big change in air density. But that Atlanta start really scares me off. So it's pretty much a hard no.
Someone who we will be talking about on our Tuesday morning episode, I think, of Fantasy Baseball in 15. Because if you're in a daily league and you could just pick him up for that one start against Colorado in Miami, certainly nothing wrong with that. But I lean with you. I just would be very concerned about what could happen to my ratios if I tried out Daniel Castano against the Braves in Atlanta. Here's someone who I am interested in, JT Brubaker. 2 tough starts, or at least one very tough start, and then one could be tough. At home against the Dodgers to start the week. Then he goes to Milwaukee to take on the Brewers. We know what the Dodgers are. We don't really need to talk about it too much. The Brewers in Milwaukee, that makes things a little bit tougher. Going to American Family Park still feels very strange to call it that. But Brubaker has been basically effective for the balance of the season. This is one that I think I would chance that Dodgers matchup because of just how good Brubaker's been basically to this point of the year.
Yeah, I'm not sure that I would. Yeah, it's certainly not an automatic start for me. I'm not sure that I really like Brubaker a whole lot more than some of these other options. But if you really need volume, I think this is the way to go.
Yeah. You like him? Do you like him in a scenario in which Boyd and Brubaker were available to you? Do you like Brubaker better?
I do, absolutely. Yeah. I just pound for pound, I just like him better as a pitcher. And then, I think that with that Brewers matchup, he's got a better shot at giving you at least a decent week.
And that's where this comes in. That's why I like Brubaker in general. All these other guys, even Boyd to an extent, not quite, but these are guys who we're talking about because of the circumstances. They are the handful of guys making 2 starts who are available in most fantasy leagues this week. That's why we're talking about them. In a different week, these guys could be making 2 starts, and we wouldn't even have time to mention them on the show because there would be so many better options. Brubaker's the one guy who I think can carry his own weight, who is addable on merit, not just on circumstance. And that's why I would be thinking about him as I am making my bids a little bit later today. One more guy. Again, I said we were going to mention them all because there are so few of them this week. Jon Lester at Tampa versus San Francisco. He hasn't been great this year. These matchups are bad. It's a pretty easy pass for me.
Yeah, well said.
Sorry, John. Still got a big place for you in my heart, but just not the week to be adding Jon Lester, even though he is getting that 2-start week. Manscaped is back. No, we can't forget about them. They've got a new trimmer, the Lawnmower 4.0. What makes it different than all other trimmers? Well, First of all, it's got this on-off switch, multi-function, can engage a travel lock created for people who like to travel. And hey, now we're getting back to travel, so something to think about for sure. Lawnmower 4.0 gives you the ability to turn on an LED spotlight when you need it for a more precise shave. It even allows you to customize your trim all over with additional guard length sizes 1 through 4. It's waterproof. Oh my gosh. It makes me knock over my mic. It's got a wireless charger. This thing is basically the best tool for you in the grooming game. Get 20% off and free shipping right now with the code FBN15 at manscaped.com. 20% off and free shipping at manscaped.com when you use the code FBN15. Unlock your confidence and always use the right tools for the job with Manscaped. As we all know, baseball season is in full swing. We've got fans back in the ballpark. We've got a full slate of games every single night from now through October. Things are really feeling great, fun, and normal around America's pastime. We here at The Athletic and our betting partners at BetMGM want to bring you even closer to the game we all love. Right now, you can bet $1 to win 100 and get a free year of The Athletic. That's right. All you got to do is place any $1 bet, get a full year of The Athletic plus $100 from BetMGM when you win. Great sports writing and extra dollars in your pocket. That is a beautiful thing. To take advantage of this offer from The Athletic and BetMGM, go to betmgm.com/athleticmlb. This is a new offer for new BetMGM customers only. Winnings are paid out in bonus dollars. BetMGM.com/athleticmlb. Visit betmgm.com for terms and conditions. All right, Al, let's wrap this up. Let's talk about relief pitchers here. Just 3 situations that I want to look at, and situations that you and I have talked about quite a bit over the last week. The first is Lucas Sims. Al, can we say it? Is he the guy? Is he the guy in Cincinnati? He's got saves in 4 of his last 5 appearances, including both of his last 2. I think he is as close as the Reds will get to having a guy this year. That makes him very attractive in the fab market today.
I think he's the guy. Now I've talked a lot about TJ Antone over the last several weeks and how much I like the skill set. I know I'm not alone in that, but you just look at the usage patterns and it really does seem like Sims is the guy. So he's the one to pursue this week, I think, if you do need saves. And we all
probably
do.
Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, and we all do.
Oh, we all do. Exactly. And I would say probably the best reliever to pursue this week, regardless of team, regardless of situation. I think he's probably the most locked in guy who is available right now.
I would agree.
All right, let's take a look at another team we've talked about a lot in this context this season, the Baltimore Orioles. We've seen Cole Sulser and Paul Fry both get saves this week. Are you chasing either one of them?
No, I'm waiting for some clarity on the situation because I don't mind either one just on their own terms. But if you're talking about splitting saves in that Orioles situation, that could be really, really scarce and probably just not worth the roster maneuvering, much less whatever you'd have to bid.
I agree. And the other thing that puts that over the top is that neither of them is so good or gets so much work that if they're not getting saves, they're going to contribute meaningfully to your bottom line in ratios or Ks. Just not that kind of pitcher. It's not that kind of situation. So that makes it really hard. You really want one of these guys to step up and get at least 80% of the save opportunities. Short of that, it's hard to have much juice for either of them. Scott Barlow, this might be different. He got the last save for Kansas City. He got it on Thursday. We know that this team has not committed to anyone since they put Josh Stomont on the IL. Josh Stomont was the last pitcher in Kansas City to get consecutive saves. That happened in the middle of May. They've seen 3 different guys get saves since Stomont went on the IL, 1 save apiece. The reason why Barlow is at the top of my list for Kansas City is not only because he got the most recent save, again, that coming on Thursday, but he's been quietly really good for the last 3 weeks and change. He has 10 straight scoreless appearances, or 10 straight scoreless innings, covering 9 appearances, 18 Ks against just 5 walks and 3 hits in that time. So yes, there's a little bit of recency bias at play in the fact that he got the most recent save for this team, but he's also just been good. And I think that if they are going to commit to one guy with Stomont on the IL, I think Barlow's making a strong case to be that guy.
Well, I do feel a little bit burned by this situation because I thought for sure that Kyle Zimmer was the guy there. So, and it's not really been that long. I mean, it's been like a week, right? So, I don't know that that is the reason to go after Scott Barlow, to think that he's definitely the guy now. But I will say that if he is not, and he's just getting the occasional save, that he gives you something else too. He could
Mhm.
go multiple innings at a shot. He could give you great ratios, and especially because he is durable, he can really pile up strikeouts. And not that his rate is bad to begin with. So
Right.
I think if you're going to pursue a reliever who might just be sharing a save situation or sharing a closer situation, Barlow's one of the best ones in the majors to be going after.
The opposite of what we just talked about with Cole Sulser and Paul
Yes.
Fry, someone who definitely can give you value, even if he isn't hogging the lion's share of the saves for his team. So Scott Barlow, someone who we go out on feeling pretty decent about as we get set to make our bids a little bit later today. That's going to do it for me and Al here on the Athletic Fantasy Baseball Podcast. Rate, review, subscribe, all that good stuff. Thank you so much for listening. Also, feel free to email us, tafantasysports@gmail.com. We've got 3 shows a week. We will take your questions, trade, waiver, whatever it might be. We are here for you at tafantasysports@gmail.com. Thank you for listening. If you're watching this, thank you for joining us on YouTube. This show will be back, the Athletic Fantasy Baseball Podcast, that is back on Tuesday with another episode of Under the Radar. For Al, I'm Michael Beller. Have a great weekend and good luck in the fab market later today.